right. Welcome, everyone. Happy Friday. It's been kind of a crazy week this week. Lots of great stuff happening. And I think it's such a great way to end our week with two lives today. And one is with someone I'm so excited to introduce to everyone. Lindsey De Los Santos is joining me. And Lindsey not only joins me as a patient today, but also our newest team member with American Migraine Foundation. So welcome, Lindsey.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So Lindsay is joining us. For those of you who haven't met with her yet or heard from her, she is our new program and advocacy manager. She's part-time, and I only say that because I want people to go not say, "Well, why am I hearing back within 24 hours?" We actually have her part-time. We're so excited to have her join the team. And today we're going to do things a little different because she's going to share a little bit of her story and talk about why she's an advocate, but also share a little bit of her journey. So Lindsay, thank you for being willing to do this and just for opening up your heart as well. And I would just start too by saying, for those who are just joining us, if you've seen a bunch of lives this week, this is Migraine Headache Awareness Month. And so we're going to be doing lives throughout the month. This one's a little more packed this week, but we're going to be doing these weekly. And as we go through the theme of I am visible, Lindsay, so let's just start with a little bit about your journey. When did you get diagnosed with migraine and how did that change your life?
Mm. I wasn't diagnosed until I was 30, but I remember my first migraine attacks when I was about 15. And so thinking about 15 years to get the right diagnosis, I know times maybe we weren't aware when I was younger that, weren't familiar enough with migraine. I'm a little old now. So, um, So it was a long journey. It was a frustrating journey because I felt like I'm really trying to get this right so I can live my life better. One more factor that delayed my diagnosis is I was diagnosed with epilepsy. So I know there's a lot of people out there that have comorbidities and lots of things that they have to kind of live with. So that kind of affected my journey, but I was so relieved when we put a name to it because it meant that I could actually find what's wrong and treat it.
Yeah. Lindsay, did you get diagnosed with the epilepsy first or or with a migraine diagnosis first?
Epilepsy first, and then they sent me to a headache specialist.
Okay. Okay. How did it change your life? Actually, how did it change your life finally getting a diagnosis?
It was such a relief, and I think it just allowed me to live my best life because when you don't have the right diagnosis, it's really hard to get the right treatment plan. So
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
it was hope for me because I felt like I could get what my body needed and then live better for the people in my life as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've also jumped in and been really engaged in the migraine space. Talk about that. How have you been active?
Well, that's another kind of goes back to that first question is I felt compelled to help others because I truly understood how debilitating this disease is. And so that really prompted me to get into all the opportunities I could to help other people. I did start my own website, migraineroad.com, and that was a place for me to share my journey. And I was connected with lots of people all over the world because we get it. We can relate to each other. And then with other organizations, I did moderating for Migraine Again, and I also did some writing for the Association of Migraine Disorders and Miles for Migraine, as well as taking their advocacy programs. And my first love of that was with American Migraine Foundation because they offer patients so much. And so that really led me to get more involved and then now to be in this place. And I'm so excited for the work we're going to do.
We're so excited to have you. And for people who are watching who may be part of our Emerging Advocates program prior, or they may be going, well, I want to get involved. How do I get involved? Lindsay and I will be working on kind of reinvigorating things and trying to figure out the next iteration of those programs. And so hang in with us because most of you know I'm fairly new as well. But we've spent some time, and it's so great having Lindsay because she's been through the Emerging Advocates program. And so we will certainly be announcing things as we're able to and as we things come to light and are developing. But we're so grateful that you've taken that leap into the space. This is a little off script for a second, but I'm curious if you can share because we're going to be talking in a few weeks about stigma and migraine. What do you think is the thing that you've had to explain the most to people as a patient about what migraines really like. Because I think this is the question I get when people are like, oh, it's just a headache, right? And I'm
Mhm.
like, oh no, it's really so much more. What about
Right.
your journey?
Well, I think part of that was the delayed journey to diagnose me. And that was just really me learning to be an advocate for myself. And so, going through that, I think that it's unfortunate that we really do deal with the stigma. Also, it's something you can't see. So it was hard for people to really relate to the pain, the other symptoms, light sensitivity, noise sensitivity, nausea, so many things, as you said, go into migraine. So I felt like I had to do a lot of explaining, a lot of that explaining at my previous job, because honestly, sometimes people don't know what they don't know. I mean, it's hard to make it clear. So definitely feeling that stigma over the years.
Yeah, it's interesting because you paint that picture so well of what the invisible, and while we're saying I am visible this month,
Hmm.
because so many people say it is invisible, and sometimes they tell me that they're frustrated because they have to miss events with their kids, they have to miss things with their spouse or partner, they have to miss days of work, and they're like sometimes it's frustrating that you might could see it on their face that they're having a bad day, or not a crystal clear day as we talked about yesterday, but just that it's almost frustrating because there's no badge of like, hey, this is a bad day. This is a bad day. So I appreciate you bringing to light like how it's challenged you. How has it impacted your life, like on different parts? You talked a little bit about explaining yourself to work. What other ways like around, you have, you have a family. So what ways has it affected you?
It's affected every area of my life. So everything's on the table with me having that improvement in my care and in my treatment. And so, in addition to the work challenges, have been my family challenges. I have two young boys, and I don't want them to remember that mama was sick a lot with a migraine attack. So, having that clarity for them, they've also developed a lot of empathy, which I think is a great thing for them to have and to really just bring that to the world. I'm blessed with a family that's very supportive and, explaining this to my husband as well. He doesn't have migraine and this is something that affects our life completely. So, and actually what helped me to kind of be more clear for him is I took him to my doctor appointments. And I think that that was a great insight for him. And then, they kind of explained the difference between episodic and chronic. And that allowed him to just have a window into what I was going through. So that was really helpful.
Wow, it sounds like you probably have a great provider as well because you had to get to a place where you found a provider who could share that this is painful.
Mhm.
This is not just a headache. Um, it's so interesting because I love the fact that you say my kids are now empathetic, and I think that goes to show how probably your support system have managed this because they probably treated this in a way of empathy and showed empathy to you. And so your kids are now modeling that versus, oh, mom is not feeling good again, or oh, we're so annoyed, or, that says so much about how your family reacted to this too. You and I've talked a little bit about support systems, but how important is it? Like if you're right now in the household with someone, or you're an employer or employee with someone who has migraine, how important is that support system in this journey?
I think it's just necessary. It's priceless. You really need to have a support system. They can also be some of your advocates for you, some of your best. And so that support system can come from a lot of places. So that can be your family, that can be coworkers. And also, I've been really blessed with American Migraine Foundation's group on Facebook, Move Against Migraine. And so sometimes we have to seek out that support, and that's okay. And it may take time to build that. But it's really hard to go through this journey with not letting others in. So I encourage everyone to reach out, to feel that you can be brave and share your story because having the people you care about a part of it is priceless.
Yeah, I love that, Lindsay. And we will put in the chat the Move Against Migraine link, in case you are not familiar with what the services are we offer. And that is one that we want to encourage people. We started this early this month, but this year, sorry, we started this in May because of Mental Health Awareness Month. And I want people to make sure that if you don't have a support system around you, let's say you're a single parent and you're like, I am
Mm.
barely just getting myself dressed every day, much less have time to go outside and find a support system. please find yourself to that group so that you can have, in the wee hours of the night and it's quiet, or if you feel like you need someone, that there are other people who get it. And so you don't feel alone. Like that's so important. It's also a good place. We see people talk about their medications, and we don't give medical advice, but people will say, "Oh, I tried this, and my doctor said this combination." And so people speak with one another as patient to patient. And so we want to invite people to join that. It's also a good way to keep up with things that are happening and current trends and medications and research and those types of things. So, Lindsey, why do you think advocacy is so important for you as a patient? Like, what made you jump into that realm?
Well, I really believe that advocacy does so much for us. It allows us to focus on what's really important about this journey. It allows the stigma to decrease because sometimes people have good intentions, but they don't really understand what you're going through. And, I often say this is, again, the path to empathy, to understanding. And, if we're not advocating, we can't get that done. I also believe there's a sense of hope and healing in advocacy. So that has been something that has driven me to be passionate about it. You mentioned to kind of communicate with others that get it, and that is so important because often we feel alone. And migraine can be a disease that really makes you feel isolated because maybe you're not able to do the things that you want to do. So, really, just using your voice is so powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Well, as we're closing, what advice would you have for someone who maybe is newly diagnosed? And then likewise for someone who may have been diagnosed for a while?
Hmm, that's a great question. I feel like part of what I would recommend is being an advocate for yourself, as well as listening to your body and what you need. Give yourself grace
Mm,
and understanding. Know that this is not your fault. And so that is just so important. And then the other thing that I would say is don't give up. A lot of times we feel like we've tried everything. Your doctor may even say that to you. There's nothing wrong with seeking out an additional opinion and someone that might be more specialized. I think that's really important. So, I really encourage people to stay on this journey of finding what works for them because it is waiting for you and it helps you get to the other side of this disease and still live your life.
yeah, what a great, great point. And for those of you who haven't seen on our website, we have a Find a Doctor tool, and we're constantly looking at how to refine that. And there are doctors who specialize in headache medicine. And there are people, if your physician's not really hearing you or you don't feel like that they're willing to try new things, then certainly please take a look at that. I think we have 1,100 doctors across the country listed on that link. So we invite people to take a look at that as well. So Lindsey, we're so happy to have you on the team. I know people are going to be so inspired and encouraged by what you're doing. So thank you. Thank you so much. And for those of you who are watching, feel free to throw comments in the chat. And Lindsey's great about responding as well. So, and we'll be back in just a couple of hours with Dr. Jessica Alani talking about getting your diagnosis right the first time. And even if you're somebody who's been on the journey for a while, she's got some really good tips on just making sure that you're asking the right questions. And it's also great for people who are thinking they may have migraine but haven't gotten a diagnosis. So thank you, Lindsey. Thanks everyone who watched, and we will be back in just a little bit. All right, take care.
Okay.